Howdy again, and in this video we're going to talk about net present value and internal rate of return. For net present value, in order to calculate it, you will need a discount and a series of future cash flows. It is used in capital budgeting and investment planning to help analyze the potential profitability of a projected project or investment. The formula format is $NPV, your rate, your value 1 and 2, where your rate is your discount rate. Your value 1 will represent your future cash flows, and your value 2 is optional and will not be used in this example. The internal rate of return, or IRR, is presented as a percentage, and it is the interest rate received for an investment with payments and income that is happening at regular intervals. And the formula format is the $IRR values and guess, where values is the array of references of cash flows, and guess, which is optional is an estimate for the expected IRR, and its default is at 10%. Now let's jump into our example where we're going to calculate net present value and the internal rate of return. In this example, we have our initial investment, our years ranging from year 1 to year 5, our cash inflows, our cash outflows, and our discount rate, which is at 5%. Now, the first thing we need to do is calculate our net cash flow, which is simply finding the difference between the cash inflows for that year minus your cash outflows. Excuse me. And subtract that from this. As you can see, the number will be negative, and this is because this is an initial investment of the amount required to start a project. This is also called the initial investment outlay, or simply the initial outlay. Now we can drag this formula down to get the other time periods in order to calculate the net cash flows for those periods. Once we have these net cash flows for all of these periods, we can calculate the NPV. So we will type an equation right here, which is the equal sign. We're going to type in the letters NPV, parentheses. The first parameter will be your discount rate, which is at 5%. And as for the second parameter, we're going to highlight the future cash flows. And please do not include the initial investment, because that will mess up your net present value. Okay, so for the initial investment, excuse me, I misspelled that. There we go. We're going to type in $45,000. Make sure that's in dollars. There we go. And now to calculate the net present value, we'll subtract the initial investment from the net present value of future cash flows. There you have it. We have the NPV. Now we'll find the internal rate of return of the project. So you'll type in an equal sign, then type in the letters IRR, parentheses, highlight your net cash flows, including the initial investment. Close that parentheses and hit enter. As you can see, we have 13%, but I want it to be more precise. So we're going to do 2 decimal points, and now we have our internal rate of return of 12.68. One thing to note is that if your IRR is greater than the discount rate, then your NPV will be greater than 0. If your IRR is less than the discount rate, then the NPV will be less than 0. And if your IRR equals your discount rate, the NPV will be equal to 0. And this concludes our example for finding NPV and the internal rate of return. And in the next video, Eric will talk about pivot tables.